The coronavirus rages on. In Italy, over 2,000 are dead. Across the world, many have lost their lives due to the outbreak of the coronavirus, COVID-19. In the state of California, the governor has enacted several measures to try to limit the spread of the coronavirus. Social distancing is the new buzzword. In Los Angeles, California, we are going backwards. 11 city council members vote to continue to have a tents-down policy, as well as displace, terrorize, and harass the unhoused community, increasing their risk of attaining the coronavirus. Los Angeles Police Department supervisor had the coronavirus. Several members of the celebrity have the coronavirus. Several people in Los Angeles have died. And yet, the city council is against the humanity and caring about the lives of the unhoused community. What will it take for them to stop? I sense that injunction is the same as the injunction that was pushed out for President Trump for penalizing the poor by cutting off their benefits during this pandemic, I should say. And I think that's what's necessary in this time. I'm hoping the lawyers that are listening at these civil rights abuses, because I too am going to be swept April 1st at the park due to the inactions of the Business Improvement District and Park and Recreation. This will be the part and parcel of the humanity. 20 years from now, this will be our Holocaust. This will be our way of extermination of the unhoused people. Unhoused news. In Denver, Colorado, as storms rolls in, there is no social distancing. This 1800s type of model is usually used for unhoused people in all shelters, churches across the land. It is a common feature. Prior to coronavirus, oftentimes it follows with restriction rules. For example, Bell Shelter does not allow you to go back to your bed area. If you are back there, it is a write-up. Its reasoning is to stop stealing. However, at the Denver Rescue Mission, the health conditions in the midst of the coronavirus is a lot more grave. According to the president and CEO of the Denver Rescue Mission, Brad Mooley, we can't social distance either at the shelter. Our folks are right in the middle of it, with people that are poor, unhoused, and in need. In other news, Porchlight is in need of surgical masks for symptomatic men staying at our shelter. This organization is located in Dane County, Madison, Wisconsin, and mentioned that they are down to their final 10 masks. If people want to donate, they can donate at 306 North Brooks Street in Madison, Wisconsin. The first coronavirus-related death of a houseless person sets off a race to find shelter for the unhoused in Santa Clara. Pastor Scott Wagers says this inaction, the talk, and endless promises that are made is very frustrating. The people here should have been housed anyway, in my opinion. It took a pandemic to get them a porta potty and hand washing station. Governor Newsom reported that a houseless man succumbed to the coronavirus. On April 1st, 2020, Alpine Recreation Center will undergo a houseless sweep. In the past, the Parks and Recreation park rangers, in concert with George U. and Business Improvement District and Gil Cedillo, would post these signs to terrorize the unhoused residents in the community. In particular, I was one of them that were targeted. In episode 4, I touch on this matter. After questioning staff member Feng Yi, he claims that they did not have anything to do with the sign. Business Improvement District has increased driving around the park, harassing unhoused people. If you wish to report Allied Universal Protections, who is under the umbrella of the Business Improvement District in Chinatown, they are located in Wilshire in downtown Los Angeles, and their number to complain and their corporate office is 213-362-3650. Again, Allied Universal Protection Security are the employees that terrorize the unhoused community in Chinatown. If you wish to complain, contact 213-362-3650. To complain to your council member's office, Gil Cedillo, his number is 323-550-1538. Again, 323-550-1538. Mayor Eric Garcetti is putting cots in the hundreds in recreation centers around Los Angeles. They say no more groups of 10, yet the unhoused are expected to pile on cots 12 inches apart. One unhoused resident has reported at the Venice Park and Rec area. In other news, the Los Angeles Community Action Network and the Los Angeles Catholic Worker have filed a motion. They're calling for the city to suspend, number one, they are calling to be suspend towing of vehicles unless necessary for emergent public safety and waive fees and release vehicles if people are and can demonstrate the vehicle is used for shelter. Number two, suspend enforcement of property limits that lead to seizure and destruction of vital property without mechanism to retrieve those belongings. Number three, suspend encampment cleanups that lead individuals to congregate unless the cleanup includes power washing or other services for which displacement is necessary. Number four, open all park bathrooms and other public bathrooms 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Number five, deploy all public health resources like hygiene stations and toilets at scale and provide services to ensure they are stocked. Number six, suspend enforcement of quality of life offenses that result in citations and court appearances and dismiss or continue existing court cases. Number seven, ensure continued access to emergency subsistence benefits from the county. Provide an access plan that accounts for lack of internet and phone services and provide for the delivery of the Department of Public Social Services mail. Confirm that all terminations of county benefits will be suspended. Suspend SR7 and QR7 reporting, work requirements to recertify, work exemption, and medical need to receive benefits. Waive the requirement to apply for other benefits before applying to GR and CalFresh. And this is Unhoused News. Mom for Housing has sparked a revolution of movement across this country. It lands here in El Sereno. There are 3 individuals who are fed up with the ineptitude, inaction, and the indifference of our civic leaders and have decided to demand that housing is a human right.
Hola, mi nombre es Benito.
Hello, my name is Marta Escudero. I'm from Reclaiming Our Homes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ruby Gordillo. I'm an Angelino, born and raised. I'm a parent of 3. Very ecstatic to be a reclaimer and be part of this movement.
Benito, Marta, and Ruby have came together with their families and have occupied a space in El Sereno. These are their stories. Good afternoon. This is Theo Henderson from We the Unhoused. I'm right here on the site where this is Mom for Housing Part 2. We have our own version of this. So in the studios, I have a guest who is a National Lawyers Guild legal observer. If you recall in the episode, I interviewed Executive Director Kath Rogers. So this is one of her acolytes. So let me introduce you.
Hi, I'm Jordan, and I'm a legal observer with the National Lawyers Guild, and I am here with my clipboard in the rain and my green hat. My role is basically to keep an eye on the police and document everything that I see. If anyone were to be arrested, then the information that I have would be documentary evidence that the National Lawyers Guild could use to try and get that person released from jail and to defend them in court if they were to proceed with charges.
Outstanding. So what's been going on? It looks like a very peaceful crowd on a rainy day. So what happened so far?
I have only been here for about an hour, and when I got here, it was about the same as it is now. It was a gathering of maybe 50 or 60 people, peacefully singing and chanting and giving speeches in solidarity, talking about the housing being a human right and the housing crisis in California. And it's just been very powerful and moving. And there's been surprisingly a very limited police presence and no arrests since I've been here, and I don't think any arrests at this location.
So, why are state troopers here? I thought LAPD would be here, but why are they here?
That's a very good question. They've actually been kind of switching back and forth. LAPD was here, I guess, very very early in the morning, and since then, it hasn't been the LAPD, but there's been a lot of police officers and state patrol and stuff kind of driving by, and there's been a group of about 4 officers, like you just described, who are standing maybe 100 feet southeast of this group. They've been standing there since I've been here, and they're kind of talking to each other and watching what's going on.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm going to move around, and I thank you again for giving me an idea of what's going on. I'm going to just say that this seems like this is another incident that there's a beautiful house that people are occupying because there are empty houses, and we are in a housing crisis. So people always are saying, well, why don't they want to take housing, or they don't want services? But here's an example where people are wanting services, but then they're being attacked. This is Theo Henderson from Unhoused. May we all again meet in the light of understanding. Good afternoon. This is Theo Henderson from Unhoused. I'm right now in the midst of a housing crisis, and proactive action is being taken place. If you recall, Moms for Housing did something similar in Oakland. They were victorious in their request of finding housing. And we took a page from that notebook, but we also have something similar to it in Los Angeles, California. So I'm going to let the 2 guests introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Hello, my name is Marta Escudero. I'm from Reclaiming Our Homes, and I've been in unsecure housing for a year and a half. I'm a mother of 2, a 10 and an 8-year-old. We found out that these are vacant houses. There's about 200 of them from the state of California. So we're already paying for these houses as taxpayers of California. Well, meanwhile, there's families and people on the streets that are homeless, they're houseless, and we need a house, and I don't understand why the governor isn't able to immediately house these people when there's so many vacant houses available.
How long have you been housing insecure?
I've been housing insecure for a year and a half, and I was unaware that there's so many vacant homes. Of course, I realize we have a housing crisis, not only because I'm in it, but because like I've been stating, growing up, I saw Skid Row only in downtown LA as a LA native. And now Skid Row has become the state of California. And it's really sad to be going through this crisis, and that the government's unable to find solutions. So the communities have to take matters into their own hands and find those solutions. And I myself was inspired by Moms for Housing in Oakland.
Excellent. I was going to say, because it seems like the city's always response is to criminalize unhoused people. For example, right now I just got off the phone in Chatsworth, mothers like you guys have been targeted and harassed. They're living in their car, and they've been threatened that tomorrow they're going to be, their RV is going to be impounded, and they're going to separate their child and put them in Children Protective Services. So, I mean, if we see things like this and then we hear these kind of things, what do you make of that?
I feel that poverty and being houseless is not equivalent for us to lose our children. I feel that that's a problem of the system, because first of all, there's enough housing for everybody, and housing is a human right, and they don't have equitable rent for people that work to even afford it. For example, Benito here, that's also reclaiming a house. He works minimum wage and he's unable to afford a house, and he's been living in his van. ¿Cuántos años tiene en su van, Benito?
14 años, 14 years.
He's been living in his van 14 years.
So one of the things that I would like to ask as well is because how did you become housing insecure? I became due to illnesses, but what happened to you?
For me, 3 years ago, I left the country, and I was paying $1,200 for a 2-bedroom. When I came back, I saw that the rent was over $2,000 for a 2-bedroom, and I was unable to afford this. And after coming back, it's also caused a lot of anxiety in me and emotional issues for me and my daughters, especially being housing insecure. And this also causes physical issues. So to me, that's a health crisis as well. Housing is also a health issue.
Outstandingly, because I totally agree, because I have those self-health issues being out here. It is very difficult. The life expectancy of an unhoused person is considerably cut down. You may live to maybe 50, if you're 55 at the most. Is there anything that you would like your...
Leslie, it's not a potato. What is it? Come on. You're destroying it.
As you can hear, there's kids around, so, this is where kids should be, in the house. They shouldn't be out here and living in the elements. In other places, there are 34 mothers with children living in hiding because they're afraid of criminally legal enforcement that are trying to penalize unhoused people. So they belong here, and we should be, as a community and as citizens of America, we should be demanding that they have this right. Is there anything would you like to share, or what is the best way to help you to make sure you get this place?
Well, as of right now, there's 13 reclaimers, but there's 200 vacant homes. So I hope that we find a family for every home and a home for every family that needs one, especially for the most vulnerable, which are children and elderly. But I believe everybody has the right to a home. And our demands is for the governor to realize that he and the government are not doing their part. So communities finding these solutions, and he should be able to meet our demands, which is to immediately house people in these state-owned houses, and also for us to be able to own this land as a community, own these houses as a community.
I agree. And there you have it. Housing is a human right, and there is no reason why we should be criminalized or commodified having housing to be fair to our citizens. We are a very rich country. We spend trillions of dollars on war, but yet we cannot look after our own neighbors. This is Theo Henderson from We the Unhoused, and I thank you all for listening. And I truly hope that we meet again in the light of understanding. Here's another protester that came out in the rain that has demanded that housing is a human right in different areas of the city, from Boyle Heights to Echo Park and now in El Sereno. Here's Joanna Swan and her insight on the matter here. This is Theo Henderson from We the Unhoused, and I'm here in the studios with Joanna Swan, who's a DSA member and Services Not Sweet member. And she's going to give us an insight on what's been going on. So, Joanna, what's been going on?
What's been going on? Well, a lot of things have been going on, but this week we're here in El Sereno at one of many empty houses that's owned by Caltrans. This house was lived in by a family for 35 years until Caltrans got them to be evicted, and basically by raising their rent to unaffordable heights. So we're here. Obviously, we're in a housing crisis that's been manufactured so that people are making profit off of vacant homes. I think what organizer Roberto Flores said earlier was really beautiful, that they care more about houses that look terrible without tenants in them, but we care more about the tenants. And so what we're here today doing is actually moving people into one of those homes, and several others hopefully as well. We spent a good part of the morning working on the yard and weeding and planting some stuff.
It looks very hospitable. It looks habitable to me from the outside.
Absolutely. And part of that has been due to the hard work of dozens of volunteers. But again, like, these are homes that should be continued to be upkept. And, we've done a lot of outreach to the neighbors around here and said, like, do you want empty houses or do you want tenants in those houses and families in those houses? And obviously we have support from the neighborhood because of that. Nobody wants an empty house in their neighborhood. And we're here right now listening to some people talking about the need for our politicians to get our backs too and support us in this fight. We're in a state where supposedly our politicians are very liberal and, they profess to care so much about everyone and all their constituents, but until they show up and actually show us whose side they're on, whether the corporate landlords or the tenants.
That was a honking of a car. This seems like similar. We went down this road before in Oakland, California, and it was a big drawn-out thing. So I think it's like the movement is spreading. It's more of in Oakland. Do you think so?
I totally agree. And I think you can just gauge from the level of popular support how many people want to come out and support. It is a growing movement. It is a thing that most people feel, yes, why are there so many vacancies in this state all across California? And I think that's like really important to see the popular support and feel how many people are behind us in this. We're in the majority, not the minority. It's just that the minority has the support of the police behind them and they have a lot more money, but it's turning out that people power is in the end more powerful. So that's what we're hoping.
That's an excellent point to end on. People power is more important. We can definitely change the way the system has been run. And all it takes is the courage or courageousness of people just getting fed up with the narrative of the day. This is Theo Henderson from Unhoused. I thank you all for listening, and I'm going to roll her out, and I hope we again meet in the light of understanding. We are here on the streets of El Sereno, where the police looks on and a crowd is gathered, where songs, protests, signs, and just basically a spirit of peaceful revolution on demanding housing as a human right. And you're going to hear our voices. Here are some of the accounts from people on the street. Here's Rihanna. Good afternoon. This is Theo Henderson from Unhoused. I'm getting a lot of observations. That's what's going on out here. And I wanted to get the perspective of another protester and supporter for the people to stay here. And her name is Rihanna. And let's hear her side.
Yeah, so we're out here. We've got a ton of community members out here supporting the reclaimers in the home here. And our demand is that the city should be giving these public properties to people to live in. This whole street, there are like dozens of houses on this street that are all vacant. They've been sitting vacant for over a year now. And it's absolutely unacceptable that they're leaving these vacant when there are 60,000 people sleeping outside at night. So yeah, got to support the reclaimers here.
This is an excellent point because the Oakland Moms for Housing pushed for us to look at creative ways of dealing with the housing crisis. Do you think it's spreading here in Los Angeles?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so this action was actually in the works at the same time as the Moms for Housing action came about. So it's been a lot of time put into this. A lot of different community organizations are involved in this. And yeah, we really think this sentiment is spreading all over the state of California and all over the country as people are getting sick and tired of just our capitalist overlords hoarding all the wealth, all the resources, while people are left without even having housing.
What do you think if you hear people say that this is wrong, you're taking someone's house, and you should just work hard, and I came in with 1 penny and I make all of this happen for me? What would your perspective be on that?
Well, first off, so this is a publicly owned property. It's owned by Caltrans. So the fact that it's sitting vacant instead of like being used for the public good is absolutely unacceptable. These properties belong to all of us, and so we should be giving them to the most vulnerable to use here.
Well said. So is there anything that you would like to get anybody that wants to support this kind of movement? What can they do? Where could they go?
So they can sign up for shifts on the website. Let me double check the URL. It's reclaimingourhomes.org. Yeah, reclaimingourhomes.org. You can go there to sign up for the email list, and then we'll give you info about signing up for volunteer shifts. We need people at the home 24/7 to be there with the reclaimers in case the cops come and try to evict them. So yeah, check out that website, reclaimingourhomes.org.
One last question. In the Moms for Housing in Oakland, there was police officers with military tanks, anti-aircraft weaponry. Do you think that's going to be a repeat here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we should expect and be prepared for. It's hard to say whether that'll happen or not, especially since I really feel like the public is on the reclaimers' side here. I feel like it would be a really bad look for LAPD or like the state authorities to do something like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that did happen.
Well, there you have it. This is Theo Henderson from Unhoused. I'm milling around, getting different takes on the situation, and I hope to get a little more deeper understanding, and I hope again to meet you all again in the light of understanding. This is Theo Henderson from Unhoused. I'm really in the thick of the things. We are reclaiming our power, and we're trying to demand that housing is a human right, and we want housing that is available, that we don't have to spend ridiculous amount of money for the unhoused population. So here in the studios is Benito, and translating it's Martha. Benito, how long have you been unhoused?
Hola, mi nombre es Benito. Tengo 14 años viviendo en un van.
He's been in a van 14 years now.
How did you become unhoused?
Bueno, yo tengo 34 años trabajando, ganando el salario mínimo, a veces un poco más, a veces un poco menos, pero ya yo podía vivir modestamente y podía pagar mi renta, pero ya en el 2005 subieron la renta y yo ya no pude pagar.
Benito said he's been working 34 years here, and he's been earning minimum wage, sometimes a little bit more, a little bit less, but he was able to afford a house before. In 2005, rent went really high, and he was unable to pay the rent anymore.
Sí, entonces ahora ya han pasado 14 años, que desde 2005 hasta acá, que ahora tengo que vivir en un van.
And it's been 14 years now, and he's still, now even worse, he can't afford the rent, so he's living in a van still.
Do you encounter any police harassment or anything of that, police bothering you? Are you living in your automobile?
Sí, hay la policía y los vecinos también dicen que uno pasa estacionado más de 72 horas y a mí me pusieron un ticket que tuve que estar peleándolo y al último lo perdí. Y el juez, sabiendo que yo tenía la razón, de todos modos me cobró la multa.
So he says that police and neighbors harass him because he can't have a vehicle parked more than 72 hours, and he's gotten tickets before, and he's trying to fight them, but the judge is not sympathetic to that.
I'm sorry to hear that. And so this is one of the primary reasons why people are fighting for housing, because we would not have these problems if we didn't have the NIMBYs making life much more difficult and police officers joining forces with them. So you're occupying the place as well. And what are your thoughts on why did you choose to occupy this place?
Sí, cuando yo escuché de este movimiento y me enteré que había gente intentando hacer eso, yo me ofrecí como voluntario para ocupar una de las casas, porque soy lo que se dice un reclamador. Un reclamador. Estoy reclamando que estas casas están vacías y nosotros estamos sin casa. Hay 3 casas vacías por cada homeless. Entonces no es justo. Es una cuestión de justicia que nosotros debamos tener estas casas.
So for Benito, he found out about this movement. He thought it was important to be supportive of it. He's one of the reclaimers because he feels it's unjust that there's 3 houses for every homeless person, and we're able to house them if we really wanted to as a state, as a government, and this is not happening. So to him, it's important to bring justice into his own hands as a community and reclaim these homes.
You know, Augustine says an unjust law is not really a law at all. 3 people a day die in houselessness. So when he says that 3 homes for every unhoused person, I want you to think on that, because there is ways that we can help the unhoused community. We don't have to shelter our way out of it, and we definitely don't have to arrest our way out of it. So one of the things I also want to ask you is, you are an older man. Do you have health issues? Because some people say, well, why don't you just find a better job?
Sí, yo tengo diabetes y tengo que estar cuidando mi diabetes. Y también vivo escondido porque yo no puedo sentarme tranquilamente y abrir las puertas de mi van porque los vecinos luego algunos empiezan a... Antes yo cultivaba unas plantitas en el techo de mi van y los vecinos cuando veían que yo estaba feliz según regando mis plantitas me echaban la policía. Los vecinos no quieren verlo a uno feliz, por eso tengo que estar escondido.
He says that a lot of people are afraid of people that are homeless. And for him, he's a senior and he has diabetes as well. And with this health issue, it's really difficult also to be unhoused. He says that the neighbors don't let him. He also lives with a high amount of stress because he can't be relaxed himself in the van. He was actually cultivating plants on top of his roof in the van, but when the neighbors and people around saw him watering the plants, they called the police on him. So he can't be himself. He can't, grow anything. He can't even live in peace at all. And in this high amount of stress with diabetes, it's really problematic as well.
I too have diabetes, and I can tell you that definitely, because I live in a park, and I know the stresses of the police and things like that, and that makes my blood pressure go up and all this other health issues that fall into it. I notice here that you guys have self-quarantine. How are you guys dealing with the coronavirus scare?
Bueno, del coronavirus, ahorita quiero terminar de platicar lo que estaba diciendo. Por eso yo me he convertido en un reclamador y mucha gente dice que es un crimen entrar y ocupar las casas vacías, pero no es un crimen, es una cuestión de justicia, porque el verdadero crimen está en el contubernio entre las corporaciones y los políticos, porque es un contubernio criminal, una asociación delictuosa, porque las corporaciones pagan las campañas políticas y luego los políticos hacen leyes que les favorecen a ellos.
So what Benito's saying is that he wanted to speak more about why he's reclaiming, and he says it's important to point out that he's not breaking any law.
Oh, yeah.
And this is unjust that the politicians and corporations, they work together often, and he just wants justice because he knows that they work together to make things worse for us sometimes.
Ellos están formando una asociación delictiva.
They form a delinquent association.
That's very true. Do you guys have any concerns about the coronavirus at all?
Sí. Estamos preocupados por el coronavirus. Habíamos invitado a muchísima gente. Tenemos una lista muy grande de invitados y en último momento tuvimos que decir que no vinieran, que vinieran solo unos pocos, pero personas con salud delicada que preferiblemente no vinieran para que no se expusieran.
So we are concerned about the coronavirus, and we had planned a huge rally with a lot of supporters here, but we had to cancel it halfway because we were concerned about the coronavirus. What we did suggest is just maybe, yes, you could come support us, but if you feel sick or if you're vulnerable, if you feel vulnerable, such as the elderly, maybe just stay home and support us in other ways. And I myself, I feel in this coronavirus pandemic, it's really important for us to have homes because that is a major health crisis to have this pandemic going on and having all these homeless people on the streets.
I agree, and shelters are not the answer. One of the things I also know about housing insecurity, and I mentioned earlier about 34 different mothers out there on the street with their kids, there's not only a housing insecurity, there's a food insecurity. How are you guys dealing about food? What can you guys do for food?
Bueno, otra cosa que podemos hablar acerca del coronavirus es que los homeless que viven en la calle no tienen agua para lavarse. El Estado recomienda que se laven las manos constantemente. ¿Y cómo se las lavan si no hay agua? Y no sé, ¿cuál es la otra pregunta? Oh.
Yeah.
He's saying that it's a really health hazard to have this pandemic coronavirus, and then the health officials say we have to wash our hands often. And houseless people on the streets, they don't have anywhere to wash their hands. So how we're going to be spreading it more by having people on the streets.
I agree. Also, let's talk about, because a lot of stores have shut down. For example, the library is shut down, and a lot of unhoused people go into the libraries to charge their phones, clean up, and be able to keep themselves at least presentable. In the bathrooms, they have sanitary soap that would kill most of the germs. Now that that's closed, also parks are closed. The park that I stay at is closed, and so there is like the bathroom insecurity. There's no bathrooms that are open unless you have money, and if you don't have money, then you have to go and relieve yourself on the bathroom out on the street, which is another health crisis. So in dealing with these crises, how does it feel with being able to do simple things, because some of the stores are shut down? Are you able to have food to eat now that you guys are in here, or what can some of the supporters do if they cannot show up? Can they provide food to you guys or send you things for you can eat?
Bueno, por mí, yo por causa de mi diabetes estoy en una dieta muy estricta y como muy poco y bueno, pero mucha gente es un problema con la comida.
For Benito, he says he's on a strict diet, so he eats very little, but for other people, it is a problem. For us, we do want more support in any way possible. Okay. Yes, we want. We just heard that somebody's gonna bring a taco truck or a taco cart. So speaking of food, we have a supporter that's bringing that, and so yes, any help, any type of support, whether it be water, food, posting, listening to this podcast, posting on Facebook, on Instagram, and keep this movement going, because for me, my inspiration was Moms for Housing in Oakland, and I thank them. And maybe we, Benito and I, and Ruby and the other reclaimers can inspire other people, not only in California, but in the whole country, to reclaim these homes, because these are community owned. Mm-hmm. And we need to take power into our own hands when the government's unable to do it for us, find solutions for us.
Well said. This is Theo Henderson from the Unhoused. You've heard it from here. And they says, power concedes nothing without a demand. So thank you all for listening, and may we again meet in the light of understanding. This is Theo Henderson from We the Unhoused. You've heard the interviews from Benito and Martha, and now we have another reclaimer, Ruby, and she's going to tell us her story. So I will leave the mic to her.
Hi everyone, my name is Ruby Gordillo. I'm an Angelino, born and raised. I'm a parent of 3. Ages from 8 to 14, and I'm just very ecstatic to be a reclaimer and be part of this movement. We decided to take action in this because the housing crisis is increasingly by the second. It's becoming a health hazard at this point with the coronavirus pandemic, and those of us who are at least risk of being infected or whatever, we want those folks to be able to come through, support us, in the hopes that the needier, the homeless who don't have access to medical care and don't have access to a safe and stable housing, follow in our footsteps and create homes out of these vacant houses. It's ridiculous that they've been vacant for decades in this community. There is probably over 100 vacant houses that are on public land, and it is our belief that public land should be used for public good, and we're urging the community to be of support for us and, come through in any way that you possibly can.
Well said. Let me ask you a few questions to take you back. How long have you been unhoused?
So I'm actually not unhoused. For the last 5 years, I've been living in a single unit where we share one room for living space, bedroom space, dining space, a small kitchen, a small bathroom, and one closet for 5. So it is really affected us in the way that my kids are having difficulty excelling in their academics. They're gifted children. Special needs children, and it's unfair for them to be affected like this, not only physically but mentally, suffering many mental conditions from really being confined to these small spaces. More than a home, it feels like a prison. Before this home, though, we were homeless for 6 months. So I am grateful that I have that roof over my head, but for my family, we really need a bigger space, and unfortunately we're living off of one income, my husband's, and it's near minimum wage. So unfortunately, it's out of our possibilities to rent out a bigger apartment.
That's a very good point, because being unhoused, it seems like our society blames the unhoused and poor people for the conditions that they're in. But instead of listening to the systematic thing, you're saying to me that you have a place, but it's crammed and it's affecting educational-wise your children, as well as the health-wise, as well as they have special needs. Yeah. So, for example, I have a resident that is end-stage cancer, and another guest that has HIV, and she has respiratory issues. To live like that with her 8 kids would be very difficult. So I want to know is how are you able to do it? What steps do you have? Any kind of support system?
To be able to reclaim this house, you mean?
No, living in this cramped home.
I don't have a big support system. My kids do have mental health services that they are taking as well. I mean, I can't say much for extracurricular activities. Like I said, we live off of one salary, so that's very difficult. I've had in the past entities such as DCFS come through because of what my children have said, and mind you, it's things that all kids say, except other kids know not to say things in front of grown-ups, and my child has really no filter. Exactly. So he speaks his mind, he repeats what he hears, and it's caused us for many times for my home to come and be really observed and my parenthood questioned, and it's just...
Sounds like you're an ordeal.
Yeah, and I think with these people putting me into a position where I'm being told that the only way my kids are going to thrive is being in a bigger space, I'm given no other option but to do what I'm doing now.
So that's a very good point, because a lot of times I hear a lot of finger wagging about poor people, what their choices and things, and there's no options for them. But reclaiming it and telling them that we should not be working ourselves to an early grave, and secondly, we should not be punishing the children for just being poor. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, most definitely. As you know, as adults, we're desensitized to this. I didn't realize that my housing situation was, part of the crisis. And, the kids, the kids are not desensitized. They think, living in a small space is okay because that's all they've known. So, they see on their way to school the sidewalks full of tents and whatnot, and they wonder why these folks are unable to have an actual roof over their head. And, we're talking about tents that have been there for years now. So these are permanent neighbors that we have that are unhoused. They don't have the mental health resources that they need. They don't have the medical care that they need. And it's needed. We're urging our, representatives, whether it be council members, the mayor, the governor, everybody and anybody to come through and support us with the funding that we need, not only for medical care, but for housing. We have the housing. We have 3 vacant houses for every homeless person in the city of Los Angeles. That's an outrage.
I think, the police, I think the city council, the police are listening, but they're listening to the wrong people. I hear that they always are trying to arrest people, criminalize them. There's unhoused people that have like over 24 tickets. They are being threatened. Like, for example, I just had an interview with another mother who's living with her special needs kid and her disabled husband in an RV. They have came to her and threatened to say that they are going to take her child, put her in CPS, and arrest her and her disabled husband.
Right.
And the council members, the mayor, and they go and make these presentations to these NIMBYs, and as if to say over 75% of unhoused people are criminals. They are doing things, but they're doing the wrong things. The criminalization must stop. So what are your thoughts on this?
Criminalization must stop. Some folks are going to think that what we're doing now is criminal offense. I don't consider it criminal. We're just taking back what is ours. These homes have been long paid for by taxpayer money. So all we're doing is taking it back. I'm fed up of, our homeless community being targeted constantly. They're removing their tents, tossing out what few belongings they have, and just really, harassing them. And why? Because they're not the 1%? No, we're fed up of that, and we're demanding that we all have the equal right to housing, because it is a human right, and just really stop the criminalization of homelessness.
I also have to say, there is for example, Nuri Martinez, who's at the head of this, has stated this very clearly. If we keep harassing unhoused people, that they will have no other stuff and they will leave. The second thing is the people that also, Mike Fury is the city attorney. He has devoted his career in trying to criminalize unhoused people. Did you know that he was trying to expand on a criminal ordinance of 4118, 5811, and he's now running for mayor? Would that just be the type of mayor, with the housing crisis that we have and the pandemic we have, would that be someone that you would vote for?
Excuse my language, but hell no. We need our elected officials to represent us, for them to be people like you and I, people of color, people, the 99%, and for them to really work for the people. We need to start holding all these folks accountable and really pressuring every single time that we can for them to do what is right and support the homeless community rather than criminalize them. It's an outrage. Like I said, the homeless community, because we're poor or the at-risk homeless, should not be criminalized for being poor. We're constantly being labeled as lazy, as drug addicts, as any negative comment that you can think of or imagine. That's what we've been labeled as, and that's not the case. We've just not been given the opportunity that the 1% has. We weren't given, the opportunity to extend our education. We weren't given the opportunity to provide a healthy a healthy environment for our families. It took me many resources to be able to diagnose my daughter with autism. You know, I reached out to LAUSD, I reached out to the school, I wrote a 2-page letter describing her behavior and my concerns, and because her grades didn't demonstrate a learning disability, you know, she was totally ignored. And it's unfair for people like my daughter and anybody else to go through this, and I'm gonna include myself in it. I'm disabled. I was born disabled. I suffer an invisible illness, fibromyalgia. I look completely fine, but I am always in pain. I suffer chronic fatigue. It's real, and I'm tired of being harassed when I get in a disabled line and being questioned about my disability. It's my right to have these services, whether you know that I'm disabled or whether I look disabled or not.
I too have invisible disabilities, and I can tell you the times that people see me, well, he looks normal and things like that, but they don't understand the pains that I'm going through, the complications of the illnesses I have, and it's like you don't always have to have a wheelchair or just be just completely broken down in the eyesight of other people to have a disability. And I'm glad you pointed that out. Is there anything that you want to let the listeners know as what's the best way to help you? Because you have the control, you have the mic. How can we help you?
So we are asking the community to look us up on our website, reclaimingourhomes.org. We're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. There's a sign up at the very end of the page where you can sign up for being part of the rapid response team, where we need folks that can come through and support us when the police show up. We don't know how they're going to treat us. We need people of all colors, people of all economic statuses to come through and support us and really demonstrate to the community that everyone is on board of what we're doing. Folks that are willing to risk arrest and participate in civil disobedience, you're welcome and very much needed. Folks who just want to be part of the crowd in the rally, please come through. If you have any donations that you want to make, whether it be food items, furniture, even money, any. This house right now doesn't have electricity, running water. It doesn't have a bathroom. Anything, really anything. We ask and we are very grateful for anything that you guys can provide, whether it be your time, whether it be a can of food, anything. Anything is welcome and very much appreciated.
Well, there you have it. Housing is a human right, and one of the things I admire about it, one of the things that has been said, if you are talking about justice and human rights and you don't step forward and put your whole body and mind and soul into it, then take the word freedom out of your vocabulary. This is Theo Henderson from We the Unhoused, and I thank you all for listening, and may we again meet in the light of understanding. This episode has a beginning, middle, and end. Not like in the traditional sense of a story or a beginning of a podcast. It has a beginning where the American people have been villainized as being the responsible for their poverty. We have punched down, we have believed the lie. In order for us to believe the lie, that we have the lie that is capitalism. I've got mine, the hell with you, you get yours. I had 2 cents and I had nothing when I came to this country, and I pulled myself up by my bootstrap. Why can't you do the same? You're unhoused, it's because you don't want to work hard. You're service resistant. You're a drug addict. You're mentally ill. You just don't want to work. These lies has been passed on by the majority of society. It is aided by Business Improvement District. It is aided by law enforcement. It is aided by our city council members. If you don't believe me, think about this. Why is it that 11 council members are voting to continue to criminalize and sweep unhoused people during a coronavirus pandemic? Tell me, what logical reason would you want to continue to punch down on an unhoused community? There is no logical reason, only unless you're deliberately trying to infect them. Let us be clear. The coronavirus did not start with unhoused people. It started with housed people. And unlike the talk that I've heard, that housed people are not being quarantined out into the desert, it seems to be the conversation that will be used against unhoused people. Can you imagine a moment if the unhoused community had the coronavirus and started spreading it to housed people? Think of the furor, the uproar. Let alone, let's look at the facts. Many times people in the community go ballistic when it's suggested, not done, suggested that there is a park or a building is near a school. They lose all sense of rationale, reasoning, and rhyme. They would use every reason. Think of the children, think of the old people, think of everybody but the unhoused community. But it's interesting that the unhoused community is not asking for you guys to be swept into the desert. They're not saying that think about the children that you may be affecting, because guess what? Unhoused people have children too. They are not saying that they want you guys quarantined off away from the children and their elderly, because they're elderly people and unhoused too. You see, when you pass the circle of hate, you never realize that there may be a day when karma never forgets an address. We have a responsibility as human beings on this planet to be kind to one another, to treat each other as the humane entity that we are. Because if not for me, who? The 11 council members that voted for this criminalization of the unhoused, and then turns around and has now this Parks and Recreation to have, with the American Red Cross, shelter facilities for unhoused people, is partly to blame. There's no political gain to be had by trying to criminalize already a marginalized group. The unhoused people are vulnerable, scared, and confused by the lack of resources that they usually had, barely, now is completely cut off. They've already self-contained themselves in the best possible way away from you. I too stand in that number. I've definitely self-quarantined because I have absolutely, when I injured my ankle and knee, I have no reason to want to be around any house person in a hospital, because basically, let's face it, you guys are the challenges or the difficulties that we will be infected by. And until then, I want you all to remember this. As a human being, we are tied by a single garment of destiny and our humanity, or lack thereof. A couple of weeks ago, I was in inhumane infrastructures, and the inhumane infrastructure is being cracked slowly. It took a pandemic for city council members to finally discuss resources for unhoused people. That is a sad statement. At the top of this, there is a new shelter where there has police station nearby where they will have storage bins. We need to re-examine that kind of idea, because you're insinuating that unhoused people are criminals. There are those that say that unhoused people will fight among their belongings, but I will point to you, the Australia or other places around the city where people that are housed have no earthly reason to be fighting each other, but beating the hell out of each other for a roll of toilet paper. And I don't see a police station parked near their house. So when we continue to carry on the narrative that unhoused people are criminally negligent, or this is be safe and use it as a safety precaution, we are still perpetuating insidiously the myth that unhoused people are criminals and are prone to violence. We can be safe, just as safe as housed members, without having a police station right next to us. We can reestablish the trust that the police always basically love to say, that we give them a bad rep. We can do a lot of things. The police can do a lot of things. They can push back against the nasty narrative that unhoused people are criminals. They can take a stand that says, we are not going to be part of your hate campaign against unhoused people. It is not a crime to be unhoused, and it's not a crime to be poor. I hope this is an educational moment for all of us in this time of need. It is time for all of us to come together, and it costs nothing for us to be kind. This is Theo Henderson from Unhoused, and I thank you all for listening. May we again meet in the light of understanding. This is my thank you section, and many times it comes very brief or long-winded. This is one of the times I'm going to be a little bit long-winded because thanks to me injuring myself recently Sunday, I have to give a special thanks to Zinmei restaurant owner and cook Michelle Liu. When I got injured, she took it upon herself to fight the coronavirus. She went and made sure daily that I was doing okay. She fed me. She made sure I took my medicine. She made sure that if I needed anything, that I was able to get the help that I need. And she checked up on me. I also want to thank Melissa Alcedero, who came in a few days ago and brought some food. I also want to thank Jed Perriott, who came by and gave me the most awesomest, if he's probably listening, the most awesomest patai. I don't know what restaurant he got in, but it's fair to say I'll be asking for that again. I also want to thank a newly editor, Carla Green. I want to thank my existing editor that has put up with me and my constant editing issues, Carlos Nieto. I want to thank the guests, Ruby Cabrillo, Martha, Benito Flores. I want to thank one of my very good activists is Joanna Swan. I also want to thank again a very good one is Rihanna, another wushu friend of mine that's in the martial art world, Desi Stewart, Hannah Wu. I also want to talk to you about Jade Walk, and I want to take a time to explain this is why this was important. During the last couple of weeks, many unhoused people will go in when it's raining, and unhoused people would try to find places to be. So I went one day into Jade Walk because it was raining and the restaurant at Zinmei was a little bit filled. So I went to try to just get something and just stay warm. The owners there insisted that I stay because it was too cold, and they continually to replenish me with hot tea in order I can get warm. And as I want to point out, it is these acts of kindness in these times of crisis that we're going to need. The labels of housed and unhoused and housing insecure are just that, labels. If we reach a hand across and show kindness instead of criminalization, then we won't have to have a conversation why not all police are bad. But when we use them as a weaponization, we can never get to that point. To be kind doesn't cost you a thing. And on that note, I want to thank you all for listening again, and I hope to meet you again in the light of understanding for episode 17.